Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Live. We're going to take a little dive or adventure today. I wanted to talk about, well, it was on Facebook yesterday, one of the little memes that popped up, and it really struck my, it really fit into what we've been inquiring into in our talks. So I thought I would take the leap, and the passage from the Bible that was, was from Timothy, 1 Timothy 2.5. And it said, for there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Jesus Christ. So this really struck my attention because it says there is one God, and God, remember, God means the one without a second. And now, the one without a second means the totality. So there's nothing outside of it. There is nobody that can even know the totality because that knower would be outside of the totality. So there is no way to know God as an object of consciousness because then you would be the second, you see. Then you would be that which knows God as an object, and that's two. So one God means no second, no one there to know God. You ever think of that? Once you put God, and this is a problem with grammar, so that's what I wanted to look at today. The problem with our language. You see, we believe, we just assume that reality fits our language. And our language, which is the Indo-European syntax or grammar, there's a noun, verbs, objects. Noun, subject, verb, object. Subject is a noun, verb is an action, object is a noun. So a noun, an object, does something to other objects. The verb is what one noun does to another noun. And so that is a logical structure of the way we understand the world. But when it comes to God, and the language fails us, yet we try to fit God into the language. So let's look at that. So first of all, what is a mediator? A mediator is kind of like, say, a bridge. So if I'm here and I want to get to God, which is the all, and remember then the other aspect of the all, the one without a second, is that's the source. So the source of me is God. That's the one without a second. So if I feel like I'm in exile, right? In other words, and this started my spiritual path, my seeking, was the feeling that I was outside of life. I was always outside the window looking in. I was always separate from my own experience. There was an aspect of me that was, and this is a common experience of our human mind, is there is an observer who is always judging what I'm doing critically or praise, but it's always a separation, always a feeling of being out of myself. And so this creates a yearning to be one with myself. And of course, one with myself means being one with the world. And we call that love. Or we call that being in the zone. Or we call it being timeless. Wow, I'm just having even when we're so involved in something, we're not aware of time. That's the timeless. Then suddenly say, oh, I got to go catch a bus. Now I'm back here. Now I'm separate from the event and I got to go. I'm in time again. Or we talked about going to the beach. And when I went to Hatteras last weekend. And Hatteras is kind of like, the beach is kind of like a metaphor for the timeless. So we go there and we feel, we're back with the source and the world and time and the job and the family and all the struggle and stress, you see, is back. And I take my shoes off and, you see, that's kind of like a metaphor for being one with the ocean, being one with the all. So anyway, we're looking at this feeling of being in exile. And so this creates a yearning for God, which is the unity. See, God being the totality. If I could enter into that, I would not be in exile. You see, if I could enter into the totality, I would not be a second. I would not be outside of the totality looking at it, like I'm looking through a window. Like in the drug commercials, we're looking at people having so much fun and everything, and I want to be like that. How can I be like that? Well, take this drug. But the whole feeling is, this is the anxiety of our culture, the feeling of being outside of ourselves, being a victim of the world. Why am I a victim of the world? You see, that's being in exile. That's being separate from life. From the world. The world is life, but I feel separate from it. And so that separation, you see, goes into every aspect of life. It creates our consumer society. We keep buying stuff that will make us feel complete. So anyway, this whole thing about wanting to get to the source, you see. So we need a bridge. We need a mediator, the Bible says, you know. So that mediator is Jesus Christ, okay? So, all right. So I've got here. So this bridge, this gap between me or you and the timeless unity or source, or God, if you will, is like an abyss, and I can't get over it. So when we say Jesus is a mediator, then we're talking about being a bridge. Well, if you look at Jesus Christ, the problem with the understanding of Jesus Christ in our language is that we are conditioned in our materialistic world of Indo-European language, subject, verb, object, is that everything that is real is a noun, is an it. You ever think about that? Everything is a noun, a thing. A noun is a person, place, or thing. And if anything exists, it has to be an it. We have to be able to name. If I discover something and I don't know what its name is, I've got to find its name. We look it up in the dictionary. Oh, it's already named. Or we invent a name. If something is created new that has never existed before, we invent a name for it, and now it's placed in the dictionary, and then pretty soon it becomes when it's used enough, it'll get in the dictionary. So everything goes into the dictionary of names, and we can't leave anything out there that doesn't have a name, because if it doesn't have a name, we don't know what it is, and it's a mystery, and we don't like mysteries because mysteries are ambiguous. So we don't like ambiguity. Ambiguity is not having a name. Ambiguity means this is that, and this is not that. See? So this is a contradiction. So ambiguity means you've got two and you don't have one. So one is divided. Okay? So, but we have to have one. See, God is the one without a second. But here we got one that is two. So we can't stand that because we got to get to God. one without a second. So this is like a grain of sand in an oyster. This is a burr under the saddle. This is a thorn we can't get out of our hand. This is the wound in the side of Christ. This is the wound that won't heal. And so all of our myths and everything, all of our religions and myths are basically a way to get rid of this division in our mind as well as in the world. We're all moving towards that. We want to get to the one that has no second, where there is no division and we're no longer feeling in exile. So this is the promised land, or it's paradise. Okay? And so this is paradise lost. And this is paradise regained. So we're trying to get down to a formula that really explains all of our anxiety and troubles, and why we can't find peace in ourselves, why we can't find rest, and why do we have to wait till we die before we can see God, or be in a better place. Oh, well, they're in a better place. Now, what do you mean better place? That's assuming this is hell, and death is heaven, you see. And that's no way to live. Heaven is the lost paradise, you see. So it's in the religious terms, it's not in this place, but it's over there, you see. But then when this gets secularized, when this longing for paradise gets secularized, then paradise is attainable, and you can get it by getting a new house, or electing a Republican president, or winning a war, or something. It's the idea that paradise is attainable in time. The kingdom of heaven is just around the corner if we elect this politician or something, or join this religion or something. So we got these two aspects here, but I don't want to get too far away from the original idea here, that all of this problem with exile is because we're looking at the world through the third person in our grammatical structure. You remember in English class, the three persons? You got the first person, second person, and third person. First person is I. Second person is you. Third person is it. Well, in our materialistic world, everything is an it. So everything is in the third person. The first person is a ghost in the machine. The first person does not fit on our third person map. It's like science can't explain consciousness. So consciousness, in our materialistic science, consciousness is created by the brain, and the brain is an it. So a brain is a thing. You can look at it, analyze it, figure it out. That creates consciousness. So in our system, an it creates first person I. So now I is an it. We've lost first person. First person is I without a second. First person is I. The center is I. You can't count or observe the I. The I is always that which knows the its, but the I cannot be known. The I is the knower that cannot be made into an it. Because if you make the I into an it, an ego, or a personality, you see, the knower then is second to that. So this I, this first person I, is the one without a second. As soon as you have a second, you see you've made it into an it. In the same way that with God, God is the first person I without a second. But as soon as you make God into an object, you've divided the one. And now there is the second observing the one, you see. So you divide, you're back here again. So every effort we do, every effort we make in order to know first person, I, or God, creates a split, creates the wound. So we're asking the wrong question, because all of our efforts to find God, to find Jesus, to find myself, creates the wound that won't heal. That's why it won't heal. It won't heal because we're trying to find the one without a second by dividing the one without a second into a subject and an object. You see? As soon as I try to make the one without a second, the totality, into something I can know, I have just divided it, so I'm outside of it again. Damn. That's the double bind. That's the Gordian knot. That's the perfect trap. That's the whole gist of the spiritual practice, the spiritual journey, the religious journey, is to find that which has no second, and to get rest from the pain, and to be healed from the exile and the division that I feel in myself, from myself. And the whole problem is, if you want to make it simple, is our grammar. So the first person, the one without a second, you see, cannot be found. And so I cannot know myself as an object, and I can't know God as an object. So right there, I and God are one, because both are beyond thinking and conceptual knowledge and third person it. But in the it world, this is heresy. You can't say in the third person, I am God, because that is blasphemy. That's not logical. How can I be the whole? I'm a part. I'm a piece in the puzzle. I'm not the whole puzzle. But that's only because we look at it from the third person. The first person is a radical, in Zen it's called Satori. It's an awakening. It's an awakening of the first person, yet at the same time the third person is there. So both are there. I as first person, the one without a second. The center is I. I'm the center of the world. I without a second. And then there's the world events, and I can go catch a bus, and I have a personality, and people know me, and I know them, and I'm an it. But at the same time, I'm an I that has no second, that is not an it. You see? But this is ambiguous. This is a metaphor. And ambiguous means this is that, this is not that. So this is that means I am first person, one without a second, and I am not first person, one without a second. That's ambiguous. And that's a metaphor. And that is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is third person and first person. So as a mediator, as a metaphor, he holds both together. So to follow this way, the way, you see, everything about following the way of Jesus, you see, following the way. This way is transcendent of the its. This way transcends the division of the exile, which is a division created by a view of the world that is only third person. When first person awakens, it's sudden, it's a surprise, it's a revelation. It cannot be found, because that's looking through third person. First person is you stumble upon it, you stumble into it because of the frustration of the third person search. When we are totally frustrated, yet our yearning is so strong for the one, but we're totally frustrated in our search for it, and we realize the futility of it, That is the bridge. That is the mediator. The mediator then becomes this single idea that holds the third person and the first person together. And I am that. So I am that single idea that holds both persons together. So I know my center as being the center of the universe, and at the same time, I am a part of the universe. Just like you and me, a part that will die, is born and dies, has a lifespan and everything. But the center that has no second is timeless. You could say the center is the soul, but it's the timeless center that we're all looking for. But we can't give up the it world, because I'm also that. So I am this and I am not this. Or I am that and I am not that. And that is not logical. You see. And that's the whole problem, is that the it world that we look at is a logical world. You see? Logical. Thinking is logical. Third person it. Everything is a noun, is logical. This is a noun, and this can't be a lamp and a marker at the same time. That's not logical. So a noun is a noun, the lamp is a lamp, the marker is a marker. They can't be the same at the same time. But when I say this is that and this is not that, I'd be saying, well, this is a marker and this is not a marker. Okay. In poetry or dream world, that's possible. In art, that's possible. But in the it world of reality, it is not possible. But first person is not logical. The combination of third person and first person is like saying this marker is a marker and this is not a marker. So this tension creates the birth of a single idea that can hold both together at once. You see, that would be the resurrection from the cross of the suffering of this wound that cannot heal. The lance in the side of Christ is this wound of being exiled that cannot heal. And so the healing of it is the resurrection of a single idea that holds both persons together as one, yet still two. It's one because both are, third person and first person are one, yet they're still two. And that is not logical. So I will leave it with that, and thank you for jumping off this diving board into this unknown territory. And this is not to mean that your view and your religion is anything wrong with that. This is just a different view for those who would like to find a solution to their puzzle. And so I'll see you tomorrow.